Could all take your seats, please? Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'd like to call this Waupaca County Board of Supervisors regular session meeting to order on this Tuesday, August 19th, 2014. Please press your roll call buttons.
Going down in members and stuff.
Just want to make sure they know it's me.
24 members present.
Clerk Robbins, are we in compliance with the open meeting statement?
Yes, we are. It's been posted and published.
Okay. When we rise for a silent meditation pledge of the flag, today, please remember a number of our own that have health challenges. Mr. Barrington, I believe, is on his way home today. Great to see Darrell Handrick here. Great to see Bob Fleece here. And it's always great to see Gene Sorensen here. I have to tell you a little story about Gene Sorensen. We attended the investiture of Judge Vicky. We walked out together on the third floor. We proceeded down the hall. I couldn't hardly keep up with him. I took the elevator. He says, "No, Dick, I got to go down the steps for exercise." 3 steps, 3 stairs, 3 floors. I got down the elevator, thought I'd meet him in the stairwell. I go out the door. He's halfway to his car in the parking lot already. Guy's amazing. Way to go, Gene.
Thank you.
So when we stand today, please remember all of those in our prayers and for continued healing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Okay, we all received the agenda in the mail. There is a change. Mary?
We did receive a phone call from Eric Fall. He will be placed on next month's agenda. He had it marked down for tomorrow, and he apologizes, but we'll have him on next month. And then also, under Clerk of Courts, we just have the written report in your packet. Terry Tooze is out ill today, so she won't be giving that.
With those changes, I need a motion for approval of the agenda. There is a motion by Supervisor Jonley and a second by Supervisor McClone. Any other questions or discussions regarding that? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 24-0.
Likewise, the minutes of the previous meeting.
And on the minutes, I just want to make a typographical correction. On page 2, under Revenue Generation Team, that should be Supervisor Dave Johnson, co-chair, and Dean Steingraber as co-chair of the Revenue Generation Team.
With those, there's a motion by Supervisor Fedorowicz to approve those minutes with those changes. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Handrick. Any other questions or discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 24-0.
Next item is report number 9. It will be the auditor's report by Finance Director Heidi Dombrowski. Morning, Heidi.
Morning. On your desk this morning, you should have had 2 books. You have a fairly large book that's the annual financial report effective December 2013. It's about a 120-page document. I'll be referring to that, but we won't be going through that unless you would like to. The second book is the Management Communications. Some of you may not have is what looks exactly like this because I had to make some photocopies. I ran out of copies. So if it doesn't look just like this, it is identical, but just wanted to let you know that. And I'm going to start on page 1 of that report of the smaller book of Management Communications. And Waupaca County contracts with Schenck and Associates to do the annual audit for the county. And page 1 through 3 kind of gives you a guideline as to what they do audit and what their scope of the audit procedure is. And mostly they look at the internal controls and make sure that we have the internal controls in place that are needed and make sure that the figures that are represented in the CAFR are actually of sound nature. So that's, in general, the scope of the audit. And on page 2, about halfway down, it talks about the findings. And every year we have the same finding. And basically what the finding is they have to state in the management communication that they provide or assist in doing the report on the federal assistance on awards and state awards. And that's pages 82 through 99 of the CAFR. They generally put this together. This is a general finding throughout most entities. It's a very difficult report to prepare and very time consuming. So they do assist in that. We provide them the numbers and then they put that together. Then page 3 just basically indicates that they did not run into any disagreements with management, that they were provided the information that they had requested, and all departments within the county did work with them to give them everything that they needed to perform their audit. And I'm going to skip up to page 5. This gives us a general snapshot of the summary financial information. And through the budget process, through a lot of times that I stand up here, I talk about fund balance. The fund balance is a critical piece in seeing where the county is financially. And basically we want to assure that we have an unassigned fund balance that meets the fund balance policy that we have adopted here at the county. But just as you go down, I just wanted to note that there's different categories within the general fund, which is the largest fund within the county. We have non-spendable fund balance, which means that the funds are not here to actually spend for these areas. And the most notable one is for delinquent taxes. At the end of 2012, you can see the delinquent taxes were at 2.6 million. And at 2013, we were able to book it down to 2.2. That's a direct effect down to your unassigned fund balance because that now becomes unassigned funds that you can use. And then you can see that we have the restricted area. These are funds that we've received that are restricted for a purpose from outside parties that we have to keep set aside separately for the purpose that they're restricted for. The unassigned fund or the assigned fund balance is either a balance that the county board has decided to assign via the finance committee or upon the recommendation of either myself or someone else within the county. And you can see where we've had the assigned fund balance. Our unassigned fund balance at the end of 2013 was 6.7 million, up from 5.8 million, which is a really good accomplishment. And then what I do want to do is kind of call your attention on page 65 of the larger report. You can see that our fund balance policy at the very top portion of that is 25% of our general fund operating revenues. And the 25% of that would be 5.5 million. And currently we're at 6.7, which is 31% of operating revenue, or 1.2 million over policy. So we ended the year very strong. A lot of it having to do with this, with the non-spendable and delinquent taxes. And then the remaining increase is due to just expenses being under what we had budgeted for the year. The remaining area on the bottom half of this is your special revenue funds. This would be your area of health and human services, your transportation, and your economic development funds. And then the debt service is a restricted balance. And then your capital projects fund, we're seeing 8.9 at the end of 2012, or 3.6 at the end of 2013. And that's the spend down of the bond proceeds that we've received. And that's that's a restricted of those unspent bond proceeds. So as you spend down those proceeds, you'll see that fund balance decrease. And page 6 just gives you a quick snapshot, kind of reiterates what I said. The unassigned general fund increased about 924,000, and 399,000 of that would be due to the decrease in your tax collection, and the positive variance of 769,000 to the expenditure reduction. The Health and Human Services Fund did see a significant increase, and mostly that's due in part to revenue that we had expected to receive in 2012 for the WIMCAR payment, which is right around 400,000. We did not receive it in 2012, but we actually received two payments in 2013. So that was booking of 2 years of revenue in 1 year, because we did not know what that amount was going to be when the year ended 2012. And again, the capital projects portion is going down as we spend down those bond proceeds. Page 8, we start talking about our enterprise funds. Our enterprise funds are your highway operations and your like the nursing home operations. And I skipped a page. Actually, page 7 is where we're going to start out at. And you can see just in that operating income, you've got $807,208 in the highway operations, with an increase from 134 the year before. Now, page 8 kind of gives you a really good picture as to how that happened. And as all of you know, 2013, we had a lot of winter, and we had a lot of construction going on, which meant that they were able to utilize their equipment, and their equipment utilization brings up their revenue for the machinery cost pool. And you can see on page 8, it shows their cost pools and which ones, where that net income comes into play. And you can see that 600,237 of that operating income came from machinery operations, in comparison to 73,000 the year before. So that's where you're seeing a big jump in the highway operations operating income. And in note to that, they purchased $647,000 of equipment, which is why you have that you increase that revenue on the equipment operations, which gives you the funds then to purchase your equipment for that operation. And then page 9 gives you the special revenue fund operation, which is Transportation Services Fund. This is the fund that the Highway Department would actually come in and perform county work. So you can see that we levied in 2013 $2.2 million, and then we had the federal aid and state aid of 1.5. You can see where your maintenance and construction and your administration is at 3.8, with a operating loss of 37,197, with a slight decrease in your fund balance in the Transportation Services Fund. Page 10 gives you a snapshot of your enterprise fund of Lakeview Manor. In 2013, we had an operating loss of $921,000. in the nursing home, we receive a supplemental payment that is about $400,000, and then their property tax appropriation was $849,000, and you can see their net income at $328,587. So that supplemental payment program is critical to the operation there. So hopefully that stays in play, but it's always a catch-22 on that one. And then page 11 just gives you the summary of payment rate worksheet for the nursing home. And as you can see, in 2008, the fringe benefit ratio, that's what's changed the most. The fringe benefit ratio was 62%, and in 2012, it was 31%. I just wanted to, and then the rest of this report is comments and observations. This is information that is going to be, that we will need to address in the finance area as far as new disclosure requirements for 2014 financial statements. And then at the back page is the appendix, basically that Mary and I have to sign. It's a letter stating that we both agree with the auditors and management that these numbers in the CAFR are accurate. That's a little snapshot, and I just wanted to come back to the larger report because we talk about fund balance quite often. And if you want to turn to the page 110, and as I talked about, the fund balance policy was adopted that we were going to try to meet 25, our unassigned fund balance should be at 25% of our operating revenue. And I just wanted to point out, this gives you a 10-year snapshot, which is really good to see. But as you can see, in 2009, we were actually looking like we were at the lowest in our unassigned fund balance, which was at $2,023,000. That was at 10% of our operating revenue that year. And now, as I stated, we're at 31% in 2013. So departments have done a very good job in holding their expenses where they need to be. And again, the delinquent tax piece is a big piece of that. Another piece of it in 2013 would have been the collection of interest on delinquent taxes. That had a significant increase in comparison to what we had budgeted. And so that's just a really good piece to go into the 2015 budget with, that we're at holding steady there. Another impact of that is we have not budgeted for a period of time usage of the unassigned fund balance during the budget process in order to balance the budget. So that's all those pieces plugged into it has really increased our fund balance significantly from unassigned fund balance from 2009 to 2013. And our overall fund balance in the general fund has increased significantly also, about $4.7 million. I can go through, answer any questions, or go through more detail if you'd like.
Heidi, if I could just say something here about the fund balance. That's simply amazing, just amazing that we're at 31% now and we're as low as 10%. I feel a part of that 10% back in 2009 is my fault, because after you sit on a finance committee and go through 15 days of meetings and cut all the pens and pencils you think you can, and you just get, and on mid-October you want to get this over with, and it was easy for Dick Kepton to say, well, let's take it out of the fund balance and we can go home, it's all balanced. Well, this went on a couple of years, and like Heidi said, it got down to 10%. When the management team took this over, took the budgeting challenge over, and worked together on their budgets as a team, they had this challenge to bring this all the way to 31%. Unbelievable, folks, because we had it going the wrong way, and because Heidi and her management team members sitting out there, many of them are, their hard work and sacrifice, this is where we are today, and thanks to them for their good work.
Heidi, I have a question.
Yes.
On the little book, on page 8, down at the bottom on the highway department, it says there is 4.7 million in cash at the end of 2013. Can you explain what that is?
If you go to your larger book, unless I just gotta find it, I know I have it tagged. Page 36 and 37 is your statement of cash flows for the highway operations. And you can see, as of January 1st, 2013, the cash equivalent that was in the highway operations was at 1.3 million. Then you can see that they have increased that by 3.3 million, 3.3 million with an ending cash balance of 4.7. Now, each fund has their own cash balance. We have, so the highway operations cash balance is at 4.4. I guess am I answering your question, or what are you?
Is that money used for the next year, the upcoming year, or what exactly is it sitting there for?
As they make, it's sitting there for their purchases of their assets, their capital expenditures for their equipment. The highway operations always has a cash balance. They are taking, they have what you call cost pools that you charge out. So basically, they charge back every item that they produce. They either charge the municipality, the state, local municipality, and the county. And there is the equipment rate. They charge for the equipment, and then they charge for an administrative rate. And there's upcharges to cover their costs, and they have to evaluate that on an annual basis to see what that charge would be. And then anything above and beyond goes into their cash balance that they've received. And it would be for future purchases, that kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
Any other questions?
Good.
Anything else?
I don't have anything else unless the auditor was here, met with the finance committee last week. Unless the finance committee wants me to add any more from that. I think I pretty much went through the same type of processes they did.
I think, like I said last year, you go through this book in your easy chair at night, and if you have any questions, mark them, and give Heidi a call. She can answer those questions professionally. I sure can't. I do get a call now and then, but Heidi'd welcome any calls to straighten out any questions you have. Thanks a lot, Heidi.
Thank you.
Thanks for your good job you do. Report number 10. Our clerk of circuit court, Terry Levy, is ill today, so she will not be making her report at the podium, but we'll just put it on file in the clerk's office. Guess I'm up. Just a few things from the Wisconsin County Association Board of Directors and executive meetings we had 2 weeks ago on a Thursday and Friday in Eau Claire. I'll be quoting some things that Executive Director Mark O'Connell presented to us. One thing I do want to point out is in your packet, the Wisconsin County's 2015-26 legislative agenda. Those are just small ideas how Wisconsin Counties is fighting for us in the legislature, and it's got every department here and the stand they're taking. And as I'm standing here, one of the STARS members of Wisconsin Counties just walked in. Kyle Christensen walked in. There he sits in the back. Kyle should be up here talking all about what I'm going to say, a few things, because he is actually the Director of Government Affairs for WCA. In our office reorganization a year or two ago, I think it was a little over a year ago, Kyle took top spot. He's highly regarded at the Capitol. He's over there a lot. He does great things for WCA in all 72 counties. And I think, Kyle, you're going to be meeting with Highway Commissioner afterwards, okay? I don't know if you had a few minutes, if you want to just give us a short report on some legislative matters, could you do that up here?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be a lot better than what I might say here. I got mumble jumble here. While he's coming up here, I want to welcome an icon with Waupaca County Government, Jim Lawhern, as our guest here today. Welcome here, Jim. Good to see you. I've got a few notes here, Kyle, but boy, you're in a war down there. You know what's happening. And I was going to tell them about the $700 million hole we are in the transportation budget down there and what we're planning on doing that. I was also going to tell them about the consortium that might be working in a different way than we feel, because Wisconsin counties and league of municipalities have joined forces along with the Wisconsin Towns Association, and where we stand and where the other group stands, and what we should be careful for and not sound that resolution. If you just want to cover a few of those things better than I could,
Yeah,
okay?
absolutely. Thanks for having me. A focus of WCA right now and heading into the next budget cycle, which will really kick off next January when the new legislature is sworn in, will be transportation funding. That will be one of the 2 or 3 major issues of the governor's budget that he introduces next February, and we're trying to lay the groundwork. The reality is, right now, the state transportation fund has a deficit of about $700 million. So that says if we just want to fund the commitments that we're funding right now, you need $700 million. If we want increases, especially in local programs like our general transportation aids or state highway maintenance or the LRIP program, you need even more than $700 million. You need maybe $1 billion. And then if the road builders and the major construction projects want more money, then you need even more revenue. So the transportation fund right now is in a very bleak, and I guess what I would categorize as a dire situation. One of the reasons, as we all know, is Wisconsin has one of the most narrow revenue bases for transportation in all of the country. Basically, over 90% of our state transportation revenues come from just 2 sources, which is vehicle registration fees, $75, which is not real high compared to other states, and then our gas tax, which of course in 2006, I believe, we stopped indexing or adjusting for inflation. So what you've seen is as vehicles have become more fuel efficient, as people are driving less, we're actually collecting less in gas tax than we used to. So that, compounded with the fact that transportation costs are rising, leads to about a $700 million deficit. So something that we formed last year and we're continuing to work with is the Transportation Coalition. This is a very broad coalition. It's local governments, it's operating engineers, it's transportation builders, the road builders, the laborers, the carpenters, very broad and diverse group. Historically, a lot of these stakeholders, including us and the road builders in particular, have been at each other's throats, kind of fighting over different items in the transportation fund. What we came to realize about 2 years ago was that doesn't work anymore. We need to all be pulling in the same direction. If you look at the other states that were successful in raising new money for transportation, they had very broad-based coalitions. So right now we're in this coalition. I was very successful in the last budget. We had increases, 4% increase in general transportation aids, $52.5 million increase in state highway maintenance funding. We had a 1% increase in transit funding. So kind of across the board increases in transportation. Again, what we're doing right now is we're meeting with legislative candidates. Our goal is to meet with every single member running for the state legislature 2, if not 3 times between now and November. And our message is simple. Don't close the door on new revenues for transportation. We know a lot of people are running around there trying to get candidates to sign no tax pledges. I will under no circumstances raise taxes if I'm elected to office. And our ask of them is, don't sign them. Just keep the door open. We're not making you commit to any funding source. We're not making you commit to which programs are going to see money. But at this time, just be open to more money for transportation. That's our ask. What we're worried about is if you start dividing the pot before the money's there, nobody's going to win. So let's raise the money. Once we raise the money, then us and our members of our coalition will split that up. What we had a few weeks ago was a group called the Move Wisconsin Forward Alliance, who sent out resolutions to counties and other units of local government, which sent a little bit different of a message. It wasn't raise more money for transportation, it was, we actually already have enough money in transportation, we're just spending it in the wrong places. Rather than overbuilding highways or sending money down to Milwaukee, we need to put into local aids. And on the face of it, that doesn't sound that bad, more money for locals. But again, the reality is that we have a $700 to $1 billion deficit in the transportation fund. And if you don't raise more money for transportation, you're not going to get more money for local governments. So the Counties Association, the Towns Association, and the League of Wisconsin Municipalities put out a letter, I believe probably a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, just urging counties to really think about the repercussions of passing that resolution. Because of course, when you use language like what was in that resolution talking about overbuilding highways or spending too much on new roads, there are members of the coalition that take offense to that. And again, when you look at other states the last 2 or 3 years that have been successful in raising more money for transportation, we all know there's a kind of an anti-tax wave going across the country. But if you look at the states that have been successful, it's because the coalition's been brought together. Very broad-based. The stakeholders are all pulling in the same direction. We think that's important. So we did send that letter. We would encourage you to really think about, again, the repercussions of signing and passing that resolution. But with that, we are hopeful. Agency budget requests are due to the governor on September 15th. We've been told that the Department of Transportation, however, will not be submitting its budget request on September 15th. In fact, they won't be submitting their request until after the November election. We think that's good news because the reason, most likely reason for that, is that DOT is going to request new revenues. New revenues mean tax increases, tax or fee increases, probably a combination of both of them. And of course, the administration does not want tax increases to be part of this gubernatorial campaign. So until the November election, we elect a new governor, new legislature, that's when DOT is scheduled to come out with their plan. We're going to work on some marketing ahead of that as well. But again, our message at this point is grow the pot, more money for transportation. We'll divide it up later, and we'll decide exactly which taxes and fees to raise. But for legislative candidates, just keep the door open, stay open-minded as far as transportation is concerned.
Thank you very much. Any quick questions for Kyle? Yes. Bill.
I heard a news report, and I just heard the very end, but could you comment on wheel taxes? I believe that news report said there was 3 counties in Wisconsin that have it, and there's 3 or 4 more counties voting this month on a wheel tax. What does the Counties Association say about that?
Yeah, we're very supportive of counties having the authority to impose taxes at the local level. The truth is there are very few local option taxes that counties have the ability to adopt. Well, one of them is the local option sales tax, and the only other one's the wheel tax or the registration fee. Right now, I believe we have 1 county that imposes it, which is St. Croix County. Then Milwaukee, Mayville, and either Beloit or Janesville, I believe. Dean, do you know which one? Those 2, but I think between counties and municipalities, I think there's only 4 in the entire state. I believe now Appleton is talking about adopting one. Chippewa County has talked about one. It would raise about $500,000 there. So I mean, we're talking kind of real money here. I think my recommendation to counties off the record would be the more municipalities and the more counties that adopt a wheel tax, the legislature, which has this anti-tax kind of sentiment around it, is going to take notice. And right now, the wheel tax, you can charge whatever you want. In theory, you could charge $200 a vehicle if you wanted to. So it's really not capped at all. I think as more communities adopt the wheel tax, there's going to be additional restrictions on there. So what I'm telling some counties is, look, if you want to do this, of course you want to be reasonable with it, but do it sooner than later because in a few months, you may not have the ability to do it.
One more question? Kyle, thanks so much. You put you to work, and we're going to get you up here next year and really talk about, give us a little update, just like you did more, only more. It's great. Absolutely. Good to see you, buddy. Thank you. You betcha. Boy, talk about a bailout. Thanks, Kyle. Just a couple other things. Mark O'Connell reported that the Wisconsin Counties Association is doing very well financially. And, you know, at one time we had 13 cents in the bank down there when Mark came aboard, and now we got money in the bank. And again, he announced there'll be no dues increase for the 72 counties. Since he's been the executive director, there's never been a dues increase. And he said as long as he's the executive director, he says you can count on no dues increase. And what's happened at Wisconsin counties, I've said this before, is the growth of the County Mutual Insurance Corporation, and there's a subsidiary of WCA, and also the Group Health Trust, which is health insurance. And they pay dividends back into the Wisconsin Counties Association, so therefore we don't have to raise dues to cover expenses down at WCA. And Wisconsin Counties Association, in my time down there, has come so far with people like Kyle Christensen joining the staff, and now the top man down there, right behind Mark O'Connell at the Capitol, going over there, and Kyle probably lives over there, and you can see why. He knows his stuff. He's a good speaker, and he sounds like the next governor in Wisconsin to me. But other than that. Thursday, I do travel to Madison for a 9 a.m. WCA meeting to pick the new WCA second vice president. There are, I think, 4 other past presidents of Wisconsin counties that sit on that committee, and we'll be interviewing, believe it or not, only 2 candidates this year to one day be the WCA president. That's probably the all-time low. And also, my time is up with the WCA, sadly. It's you know, it's a term thing, and being a second vice president first, and then a president, and then you're on 2 more years as past president, and my time is up. However, at our district meetings, one can be elected to the WCA board if you're nominated and beat the other candidates. However, 2 of my buddies represent this district, and that's Phil from Portage County, Isvug, and from O'Connell County, Mr. Reimer. And they're really close to me, and I would never run against those 2. Mark O'Connell did come to me before we left that day, and he says, Dick, would you ever consider being back here on the board of WCA? And I says, sure I would. So he's going to see if there can be some change in the Constitution Committee to keep past presidents on there forever, as long as you're in county government. I think I've been a big proponent of Mark's moves, and for people like Kyle, at reorganization in his office, and sometimes, believe it or not, you're executive director of Wisconsin counties, but you need positive people as your president, vice president, and so on. Because they like to think once they're elected president of the Wisconsin counties, they know it all, they want to micromanage, and that's a human fault of all of us. And I pretty much supported Mark through most of everything when I was president of WCA. So again, I want to thank Kyle for bailing me out and having an expert talk. And believe me, I think we'll need him back in a year to give us a great presentation. So thanks again, Kyle. Next, we'll have Supervisor Mary Kay Pullman talk about the NACO conference. She has returned with some jewelry, the way it looks for all of us. Mary Kay, would you like to take the podium, please?
First off, I'll clarify, I did not get my beads on Bourbon Street. No, I didn't go to Bourbon Street. It wasn't safe. They were shooting people down there. And Chairman Keppen, he may have noticed that he didn't get a cup cozy today, but I did bring him a special cup cozy.
Oh. Well, thank you.
Nancy may like that instead.
I
I'm
think
not
she
sure.
will. Thank you.
You're welcome. The main thing, it was hotter than you know where, and the humidity was about 80 to 90% every day, and the temps was 80 to 90. So they bussed us from our hotels to the conference center, so we wouldn't die on the way over. The conference center comprised about a mile long. It's huge, so there was more than just our conference going on. Most days it began at 8 in the morning. The first day we had a healthcare breakfast, because I'm in Health and Human Services types of committee. The speakers were commissioners from Minnesota, executives from Minnesota, and we discussed Alzheimer's, Medicaid, indigent care, that's a hard word to say. We did have breaks during the day in between meetings, so the first day I did take a walk through the cemetery, which is very interesting. I never knew that after a year and one day, they would take your loved one out of the coffin and put their remains with whoever else had been there previous. If someone else passed away during that year, they took them out early and then pushed the coffin in, and they hold them there for a year and one day. That was a little unnerving. And because the families keep one plot for generations. And if the family totally dies out, well, you can tell because that particular area has pretty much deteriorated. And then another family can buy it and fix it if they want. But you have to leave everyone's remains where they are. In the Garden District, Dean would have a heart attack with the streets and the quality of repair that was being done, and but they're still recovering from Katrina down there. Let's see, what else did we do? Most of the stuff that was covered during this conference we worked on from March until about a week before the conference. I was on a committee of 10 people from all over the United States. We had conference calls during that time period. We reworked the platform, the language, what we felt we were going to have to work on this coming year. At NACO level, we really don't have total staff that goes and fights for us. It is the committee that does that. The president, chairman of the committees go to Capitol Hill, fight for things for the county on a national level, and obviously us committee people make our phone calls to our representatives at the national level. When we're there in DC or in March, we go to Capitol Hill, which was very intimidating for me initially. So at this conference, all of the committees that have worked on their platforms for that time period from December, or March, excuse me, until July is approved at this level, and then all of this information is given to our legislators and our president, vice president, and all the committee chairs go to Washington, talk to our representatives, fight for what our counties need nationally, which trickles down, of course, to the states and the people that are on the committees. Our chairman, Tony Carter, is a commissioner from Minnesota for my Human Service and Education Committee. So they're spread out, obviously, all over the United States on the committee that I'm on. And so anyway, all of that stuff was recorded, was recommended. We did have an election for a second vice president, which is kind of like going to a convention for a president. We have our signs up for each state, and then they vote, and it was pretty one-sided at this convention. This gentleman had the support nationally. So I can't think of his name right now. Dick Deloge, he's from Florida. Brian, his first name's Brian. And he campaigned heavily. He sent out emails to everybody. Not every state got to vote because by the time it got through the first 6 or 7 states, Brian had already got more votes than this gentleman could ever catch up on the other fellow that was running. So for next year, the president of NACO is from Hawaii. The vice president, I can't remember what state she's from, is a lady. And then Brian is the second vice president, and then there's a multitude of members from all over the United States. The past president, Linda Langston, was from Lynn County, Iowa. She put on 370,000 air miles during her year as president, besides doing her duties on her board in Iowa. So all of these people are quite interesting. Made a lot of connections through the Women of NACO committee, as well as other meetings that I attended. Don't mean to bore you, but that's the main part of NACO, is making connections nationally. There was one lady there that her whole county is 9,000 people. She's from Kansas. Some of them, like from Minnesota, they have staff. They have 2 and 3 staff members because they have 400,000 people they represent. So it's quite interesting to see from different states how many representatives they have on their county boards and what their responsibilities are. Some of them it's full-time, kind of like the council in Milwaukee. But they have a World War II museum down there. All of you should definitely take time to go to New Orleans just to see that. The last evening, yeah, I'm getting to the end. The last evening, we had a Mardi Gras party at the stadium. All the parishes provided food, some a bit interesting. And so I stayed safe because I had to fly out the next day. But it was a big party. They had a parade for us, floats, where obviously I got my beads, and you had to watch what was going on because if you were looking away when they came around, you got a handful on the side of the head. They had cups like I guess they do in the regular Mardi Gras. And so they put on a big deal the last night for everybody. And so that was the main thing. It has been an ongoing education thing, probably more for me than what I could bring back to you. I did bring information back for Health and Human Services on different children things that were available through NACO. Safety issues I brought back, which I don't know if Andy's going to have anything from, but free programs that they'll come right here for, excuse me, safety of our employees as well as supervisors. And what else let's see, I have NACO policy briefs. I don't know what else to tell you, but it was very educational. Do have a guidebook for juvenile justice and child welfare, which I did give to Chuck, and different DVD for other programs that we can come up with. And I'm sure everybody got their magazine, so you did get some updates on it. Other than that, that's all I have. And I would, it is coming up on our agenda that there is consideration to remove funding for Dick or I or whoever else would represent us at NACO be removed from our budget. I would like you to reconsider that suggestion, keep the funding there, allow Dick to go, or me or whoever else is on a committee, or consider it at budget time, but not to remove it, because I believe it's very important that we continue being more involved with NACO, not let someone else do our job. I think we were elected to fight for our constituents, and I feel this is part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Pullman. Before we have Mr. Steingraber come forth, Administrator Coordinator Mary Robbins would like to have a break. Short break. Okay, Mr. Steingraber, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Just wanted to thank you for letting us come in here and talk about our projects that are going on right now. Our Highway Committee gets this review pretty much every 2 weeks at their regularly scheduled meetings, and they said, hey, it's time to go out to the county board and let them know what's going on as well. And if you have any questions, please ask after the meeting. I also have Steve Lawrence here, one of our foremen. He's typically on our bridges, but Steve, I think you've probably been on the paver and construction, storm sewer, maintenance. He's got a real well-rounded experience with the highway department. We also have Jill Lodewagen here, my administrative assistant here as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask here today. Give us a call. We're always going to try to let everybody know what's going on. It's not kind of hard. We're always doing a lot of work out there, and we wanted to give you some slides here in what we're doing. The first one here is County Trunk Highway B over in the city of Manawa in the town of Little Wolf, over between Euclid Street and the railroad crossing. These pictures here, the middle one is a before picture, what the pavement looked like before, and then some of the other slides in there are some of the first construction phases, picking up the blacktop on the left and then starting to dig out rocks. I don't know what it is here in Waupaca County, but we used to build all of our roads by pushing all these stone fences into the middle of the road, and there they sit. And for us to get the proper load carrying capacity, and we got to get those rocks and some of those materials and wood and all that stuff out of there. And that's some of the first stuff that we did early. Next slide gets into some of the more recent work that we've been doing out there, and starting to work on the curves by Howard Street, by Storm Foods, and then around over further to the east by Butternut and Beach Street. Again, you can see a lot of different things inside the roadway there, some pipes and things that we got to jerk out and haul away. Next one gets into, again, continuing on digging up the roadway, recompacting it, and then starting to put some of the old blacktop grindings down. Next one here is County Trunk Highway F in Waupaca, East Alfred Street, on the way out to Gilds Landing. There's a last 1/4 mile of that County Trunk Highway F, East Alfred Street, that didn't have sewer and water, had some sewer and water, but needed it to expand it out to the Waupaca nursing home and out to the trailer park. And that's what this project is all about, is urbanizing that section from Lincoln Street out to the city limits. And with that, when we start urbanizing that, putting curb and gutter, we need to collect that storm water. And before we dump it into the river, we need to put it into a system there that purifies the storm water and then releases it slowly into the river. And that's what we get into with this rain garden construction. That's the first slide here, and shows our guys down in working on the storm sewer and getting that prepared. Next, starts showing how we're starting to actually lay out the garden itself. And we start getting into different aggregates and different piping. If you want to roll it a little bit more there, Jill. We're starting to get to the finished product then. And then this one right here, we start putting mulch in there, and we're going to, then also there'll be some different plantings and stuff like that in there that's supposed to purify out the storm water before it's released into the river. So the rain garden's been a big part of this road project, and that part has all been completed. And yesterday, when I was out there working with our foreman on getting some gas lines relocated and out of our way, we had a big deluge of rain, and the storm sewer system was working. It was going into the rain garden, and today I'm going to go out there and take a look at if it's still there. And our foreman's been out there already, and it's there, it's working. But it's been that rain yesterday really tested it and got it working and taking care of that water. If we go to the next page then, or next slide. This here then shows some of the work that we've been doing. We mentioned here gas lines. Got some gas lines. The gas company hires a contractor to come in and relocate their gas line. Sometimes they don't get it right. You know, they do boring, and sometimes that boring machine doesn't keep at a consistent grade. And in some places here you can see the gas line is right in the way of our storm sewer. So then we have to modify that, move that around, and work with the gas company. And it makes it, you know, a safety situation for our workers, and it takes time to be working around that array of underground utilities. Next sheet here, next page here, shows our new fueling station in New London. This is something that through our strategic plan, we talked about trying to find new ways of saving dollars. Down at our New London location, we had a small tank that we needed a small truck to come in and fuel that up pretty much 2-3 times a week. And we had an opportunity here, combining with the New London School District, to work together to put up a larger system and allowing us to bring in larger tanker fulls of fuel at, on an average in the last few months here, about 14 cents a gallon cheaper by bringing in the large tank versus the small trucks. And also, we feel by using and selling some of our fuel to the New London School District at about 50,000 gallons a year, we're going to be able to do some savings there of ourselves and do it in a cooperative way with the New London School District and Waupaca County Highway Department. We're also looking at working with the City of New London, too, and the Public Works to see if they can be purchasing their fuel from us as well. And then, again, right now it's not quite as convenient for us here in Waupaca County to be working with our Sheriff's Department and having them buy their fuel from us, because before this system, we only had one other location in Waupaca County that had unleaded fuel. This will be the second location here now, and we're hoping that in time, as these other systems need to be replaced up in Clintonville and Helvetia, that we can upgrade to have unleaded fuel there as well. And then maybe we can be serving even all of our own departments here in Waupaca County. But this here is the first pictures of some of the first construction, and this is a little bit more recently here now. We got a 10,000 gallon tank on the left and a 6,000 gallon tank on the right, with diesel on the left and unleaded on the right, and it's all above ground, and we're pretty excited about getting the system going. Then I want to talk about some things. Sometimes people say, this isn't that that important, or this is kind of boring. But here's some riprap projects that we have done here recently through our crews. Steve heads these up. We have a lot of different beautiful beautiful streams, and we want to be protecting. Right now, in some of these locations, this particular one here, a tree fell down up on the left here in the root ball. Fell into the stream, and we worked with the DNR and the different permitting agencies to allow us to do some riprap work and some moving, of the stream around, because what happened with that root ball there, the stream started redefining itself, redefining its stream bed, and started then cutting behind the structure where the water is supposed to go through. Then it was undermining that, and it was going to jeopardize that structure. So we then came in there, did some work here with riprap, and got that in there, and now it's been secured once again. If we roll it here, now here's another project over in Simcoe, this 22 bridge right in Simcoe. The center pier was starting to undermine, and what we did was we went in there when we got some boulders. We were very blessed here in Waupaca County to have granite boulders and rocks, and a lot of them. We end up, what was this, Steve, about almost 200 ton of riprap, 170 or something like that? 169 tons, so quite you usually get maybe 15 ton on a truckload, maybe 10, it kind of depends. 18, so then we came out there with our trucks, and if you roll to the next one here, let's go one more. The truck's up on top here in the backhoe. We tried to get it out of the trucks, place it the best that we can, but you can't get those rocks thrown underneath the bridge. It's kind of hard to do it. So guess what we had to do? If we turn right down here on the lower right hand, we hired summer help, $10 an hour. And we got a lot of these young men in there working with wrestling those boulders around and placing them along the wall so that we can push that current away from the piers. Now those guys, worked their butts off and did a great job in getting underneath there and spending few dollars versus someday that thing undermining and having to completely replace the pier or wing wall or what have you. But they worked really hard at that. Those other ones were on Simcoe. If we go back again, this is at the Simcoe Bridge. This here is a storm sewer outfall that came down. You can see here that end wall, that concrete apron end wall is starting to undermine. And if we just leave it alone and don't do anything, eventually it's going to fall off, and then we have a real serious situation there. So we were able to put the fabric down, put the rock over it, and it looks like this lower right-hand corner. Now those rocks are there to slow that water down when it comes in and allows it to slow down the energy a little bit before it goes into the river and doesn't do a lot of erosion. So that's what we did in Simcoe. And then back it up again, sorry. Forward. Keep forward. One more. Okay, this is 22 south of Manawa, right by the wayside. And again, that same idea there where we laid the rocks down there and then had to kind of work them in underneath, to secure that pier. So it's a lot of hard work, but it's time and effort well spent to keep that bridge in service for a much longer period of time. And if we roll then, this is another thing our bridge crew worked on here. This is County I Bridge over the Embarrass River, just to the east of Clintonville. County I Bridge is an older bridge, a narrower bridge, but a pretty solid bridge, except for a couple places where you see these rust spots. Right above these rust spots are where our bridge grates and drains have the water come off the road and spill down. And instead of spilling straight down into the river, they splatter and get onto the steel. And after a while, the steel starts rusting and it starts working in on the effective steel. About 50% section loss were by these drains. So instead of just saying, can't do anything about it, we'll just let that thing deteriorate and then we'll go replace that thing someday. Our crew, took a look at adding to the steel here. And if we roll ahead here, we were able to work with the DOT's Snooper, which is a platform on the upper right-hand side where our guys can stand in that platform and work off of that. And this particular Snooper machine and the other service truck and the tools is nearly $800,000 in cost. We work with the DOT. They are able to provide that for us and allows us then to do some repairs on our own bridges and puts it into longer service life. The DOT is talking about getting rid of this service, and we're talking to the DOT and saying, don't get rid of that service. We need that service so we can go do repairs. Otherwise, we don't have the equipment to work on this stuff. If you roll ahead, you can kind of see here then those steel plates with all the holes in the upper right there are placed up alongside of the beam. And then in this particular picture, that's the drill that we use to drill all those holes into the existing steel, and then we bolt it. And you can see in the upper left-hand corner, there's a piece that's all been placed in there like a big old Band-Aid, and now we're hoping we can get that steel is going to now have more strength there and allow that bridge to be in service longer. If we roll again, there's a little bit closer picture to that. You can see the guys over here on the right drilling, through and doing that work. We have people that are skilled to do that kind of stuff and do it here versus contracting that out, and it's real important for us to be able to keep those structures in service. If we roll again, this here then, County Trunk Highway D to Collier Road. This is one that a project that we built last year, and it has been in gravel, throughout the spring, and we finally are starting to pave out there. We've been having problems with our paving machine, and that's our problem. We got to deal with it. The tires have been losing air, and it doesn't allow our paver to stay out there. We have to keep pumping air in it. Why is that? We've had this thing for 10, 12 years. Well, what happened is the rubber tires that we were getting, the company that, because it's starting to become an older machine, they are not making those tires anymore. So we had to go to another company that still made something similar. It's not exactly the same. And those tires are not fitting on those rims the way we want it to, so it's losing air slowly. And we're struggling with it. We do right now today have a loaner paver coming in here. from American Asphalt. We were able to work with them to get that loaner in here, and we're going to hopefully be able to continue on County Trunk Highway T and getting that project done, as well as up to State Trunk Highway 110 and Town of Larrabee and all the other projects that we still have to do. But this shows our crews out there starting to put the blacktop down, and hopefully we'll be finishing that up soon. And then this is a section here from Collier Road to Crane Road, past the St. Patrick's Church here on the left. That was the before and what we're looking at right now out there. And we will be continuing on County Trunk Highway T all the way to County Trunk Highway N. Not this year, we're just going up to Crane Road this year. But then County N is what our plan is right now for next year. So that's what we have. Just want to give you a little bit of an update. Andy, short? Okay, good. Any questions regarding those projects or anything else? Thank you for your time.
Hey, Dean, the city
Yes.
of Waupaca made a big issue about the condition of County Trunk E during their last Saturday's triathlon. Is that going to be paved next year?
Yeah, we are working towards that. That E project has been going for a couple of years now as far as design, and now this year we've been buying the right-of-way. We're in the process right now of getting the utilities moved out of our way so that we can start working on the different intersections later this fall. The plan with the federal money is, the federal money is out there for us to be going ahead with that next year. The Highway Committee has some pretty tough decisions to be making here on Friday with all the projects that we have out there. E is on the books right now to be going next year. And we've been working, with Henry and telling him, keeping him posted on what's going on there. We understand it is hard on those bicyclists as they're out there with those cracks in the road, and it's really tough, especially if you're in a competitive situation. Maybe if you're just a recreational riding your bike out there, it's probably not that big of a deal. But when you're trying to race, it is a pretty tough situation out there. But hopefully we're able to get that thing done next year. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, obviously being in Waupaca there, I get a lot of questions on that section. I guess the biggest question I get is how many outside contractors are working on that? It seems like, they're holding up waiting for this guy or they're waiting for that guy, or
Yeah.
what's that type of project? How many outside people are actually working on that?
That's a good question. First of all, we have all the utilities are being moved. So your telephone has a contractor, the gas company has a contractor, the power company has a gas contractor, cable TV has a contractor. So they're right there, just utilities alone, and moving them and setting them back farther is about 4 contractors. Then the city has, I think, 1 contractor, I believe, doing their sewer and water. Now that is done now, but it's an additional contractor. Now we come in and place the storm sewer and build the road. So there's quite a few out there, and it is a huge coordination effort there to try to get everybody to come in there. And that's why yesterday we're out there. The gas contractor didn't get the utility where we thought it was going to be. Now it's in the way of some of the storm sewer, so we got to work with them to do another move on that gas main. So, yep. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dean. Okay, we go to number 10, ordinances and/or amendments to General Code of Ordinances. A, amend Chapter 1, General Government to update titles. All changes are on file in the clerk's office.
And they were distributed to this. Chapter 1 of the general government has gone before legislative and judicial, and it has also gone through the executive committee. The changes are kind of minimal. Pages 4 is just adding City of Waupaca Annexed Ward 12, even though there's no voters, so we had to add that to our list of descriptions. And then page 5 through 9 is just cleaning that up because we do now have a human resources department, so this is just more or less taking some of that language we don't need, that isn't necessary, out of there. So that's pretty much it for this section. And then let's see, page 11 is the Waupaca County Standing Committees. We listed this out so that it matches in the other part of the ordinance in Chapter 2. So for this ordinance, I'd like
Supervisor Craig.
Move to approve.
There's a motion by Supervisor Craig to approve, and a second by Brett. Oh, I'm sorry, you've got a question?
I've got a question.
We need a motion first, okay? A second. Second by Mr. Sorensen. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the elected officials here, the judges are 6-year terms, aren't they? It says 4-year terms on here.
No. They're 4-year term.
Are they really? They were 6.
6? Oh. Well, this must be really old then. Yeah, we can change. We should amend that then. Yeah. You want to make that
Yeah,
motion
I'll
to
make a
amend it
motion
then?
that we amend or correct the point 2 there, 3 judges. It should be 6-year terms.
Okay, and there's a second by Supervisor Quistman. Please vote.
Last chance to vote on the amendment. Amendment carries 25-0. Now the main motion.
We have a motion and a second for the main one already, do we not? Okay, please vote. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead and vote. Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0 as amended.
Item B, amend Chapter 2, the governing body selected sections. See attachment or check with the clerk's office for a copy of the changes.
Okay. On page 3. This also went to executive committee. It went to legislative and judicial, then executive committee, and then legislative and judicial had some other things they wanted to change on here also, and I'll come to that later. But on page 3, that's just that wording for voting. They just wanted it a little bit clearer in case where there's no majority has been established and there are more than 2 candidates that person wins. So that's kind of the same in both on page 3, section 2 and 3. And then on page 8, it came to our attention that it might be necessary to have in our ordinance a succession of officers, because we've never had that. We've never had more than one vice chair. So under 6.7A, the order of succession for the chair position during the temporary absence of the chair or until the vacancy is filled shall be the vice chair, and then finance HR committee chair, and then the legislative, judicial, ethics, safety, and security committee chair. That was presented to legislative and judicial. It has not come back to the executive committee, but they would like to see if we could still act on that today. We'll talk about that later. Then on page 10, 12.4, the executive committee entered this amendment. As long as we are members of NACO beginning September 1st, 2014, there shall be no compensation for NACO meetings. On page 11, 13.1, we added, if practical, this shall be done within 30 days, and that's all appointments are either through election by the full committee board, appointed by the board chairperson and confirmation of the board, or by recommendation of the committee on committees. And then also under number 4, this is giving our office a little bit more time to collect all those minutes that are in, or for people in these committees to get them to us. They shall, instead of 5 days, they'll have 10 days after a meeting to get that to the county clerk, but they do have to file all their minutes with the county clerk's office. Then on page 19, that is, again, putting the standing committees listed, and then also under A, Human Services Board, rather than having all that language in there that changes with any statutory changes, they just ask that we put in per Wisconsin State Statute, Section 46. So they removed all of that, and we'll just have that in there. And then that goes through 21. Page 26. That's just a renumbering of the section number to keep it in order. And page 31 would also again be the appointments. That's just under the Appendix A of the county board chair's duties. So number 13 would have to be changed to also say, if practical, this shall be done within 30 days. So those are the amendments I have, or the committee offered.
Regarding the succession of officers, it's brought to my attention, of course, with the health challenges I had earlier, and then Mr. Barrington, and although it's listed of who might be in succession, I would like it to be in black and white and understood. And the many counties, or the counties that I've talked to about this when I was with Wisconsin counties, that many have third vice chairs just for that reason. In fact, Jerry Erdman, the Shawano County chair, called me a couple of weeks ago and we were talking about this. He said, oh my gosh, we don't have that either. And they were going to take that up real soon in Shawano County and have a second vice chair. So, and I think it's a good idea to have it in black and white. So you heard all of the documentation. Is there a motion for approval? A motion by Supervisor Quistman and a second by Supervisor Johnson. Questions or discussion? Yes.
I am asking that 12.4 parent A not be part of this approval at this time, and that we do consider it at finance rather than just saying we're not going to have anyone involved, either the chairman or a committee member involved as far as expenses or whatever with NACO. I feel that it's more important that we have people involved directly and have it financed. I believe we can fit that in our budget.
Any other discussion?
Yes.
Yes, Supervisor
I
Boyd.
have to agree. I think that it would be up to, when they're doing the budget and the finance, let them see if there's money in there without taking it out right now.
Supervisor Craig.
I would disagree with that in the sense that I think most of us know if you want to serve on a Wisconsin Counties Committee or on a NACO committee, you have to send that in far ahead of time. And so to wait until the finance and budget process, you need to know how many people do you have and who are you sending and who has been approved to be on those committees before you can do the finance. And how would, if we waited till finance, how would you know whether you could do this or not? And so I'm in favor of keeping it as it is. I think at the executive committee, when I spoke, it would have been a possibility of $12,000 that this, if we paid for the conferences for NACO, because there are 2 of them during the year, for 2 people, and plus the other expenses, it was almost $12,000. And when I had looked up last year's county board per diems and things, it was like $120,000. So it was almost 10% of what our budget is for county board that we would be spending on just 2 people to go to 2 occasions. And I don't feel that that is the best use of the taxpayer money. I think when I look at what NACO has sent us in the mail for their things, and we are being let know what their issues and what their legislative things are. And I think that each one of us, if we want, can talk to our senators or our representatives to Congress in Washington, D.C., that we don't need someone to specifically go to D.C. or to New Orleans to do this kind of thing. So I am not in favor of this simply for the money that's involved that we would have to spend for that purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Other comments?
I
Yes.
guess I have one more chance,
you do.
right? I understand your thoughts, Pat, but there's a lot of things that if every county board felt that way, we wouldn't have a NACO board at all. These people come from all over the United States that are involved in these committees as well as the board. And for my case in particular, most of my work is done phone conferences, 1 to 2 a month, webinars that are not being charged to the county, or I guess it would depend upon the individual that was approved by Mr. Keppen to go, other than the fact that meals and mileage, I never charge for any of that, but because I feel that's my responsibility. But in all reality, there's other meetings, health meetings throughout the year that are done right here in the state that are NACO related. If you remove all of the funding for anyone to be involved in any NACO items, and really the reality is there's only 8 people per state that are allowed to be on any of the committees. So I don't think that you're going to see all of us all of a sudden decide to be on one of the NACO committees. So I guess I would just prefer, and however the board rules, that this be reviewed at finance at budget time and see if it's worth what we need to have put in the budget. I don't know what else to say. I just feel it's very important, and we're not elected to let someone else do our job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't get a chance to ask Mary, but did you think that the knowledge that you gained by going to that offsets what it costs us to send you?
I guess I would say so. I think personally I have gained a lot, more knowledge of what's going on. I know I have got a little less stressed at some of the stuff that I go to, and my ability to speak with our legislators and go to different conferences that I have attended on my own time and dime is worthwhile as far as what I bring back to the board. I don't know what else, how else to put it, Jack. It's ongoing education, I guess.
I guess just a comment by myself. I appreciate the comments by you, Supervisor Pullman, and it can be valuable. However, in my term with the WC and my time with the NACO, it was interesting. I learned a lot. I don't think that anybody was going to listen, NACO was going to listen to what little Dick Keppen had from Little Waupaca County. I really relied on Wisconsin Counties Association, our association that represents the state to NACO, and other associations who represent their states to NACO. Of course, I hung around a lot with Mark O'Connell, and he knew everybody from every state in the union. And when he spoke, people listened. When Dick Keppen spoke or thought, they didn't even care. But I really depend upon Wisconsin counties to do their job out there, and because they're known, they're professionals, and that's my opinion. And it is terribly expensive to do this. We got to realize, folks, that our net new construction is only 61% at 0.61% this year. And what does that allow us, Heidi? Is $136,000 in additional tax levy? $136,000. That's all we have to work with, folks. So we really, really have to start watching where we spend what and what's more important than others. I'm not putting you down, Supervisor Pullman, because it can be of value. I did check with some other counties and another organization I belong to. All 7 counties said we don't allow anyone to go, and whether that's right or wrong, but it's a budgetary thing with them too, and they're similar counties of size to us. If we had money like we did 6, 7 years ago, I think it would probably be good for especially the chair to go and person like Mary Kay to go, but we just can't do that anymore. When I went, of course, Wisconsin counties picked up the tab, and it didn't cost Waupaca County nothing, but I haven't gone since for that reason. So that's just my 2 cents worth. Where are we? We need a second. Okay, any other comments? We got a motion and second on the floor. Ready to vote? Please vote.
To approve all changes to Chapter 2, the governing body. Last chance to vote. 22-3, the motion carries.
Next item is item C, repeal section 13.10 of chapter 13, regulation of sale of fermented malt beverages, and renumber properly.
We have to, because there's some changes in this, the numbers were off on the section, so we just want to renumber that accordingly. But this is old, and we've been kind of legislative and judicial have been working on chapter 13 for a while now, in conjunction with Sheriff Brad Hardell. And we came across 13.10, regulation of sale of fermented malt beverages, and it still says in here, any person under the age of 18 years. Well, we all know it's 21 now, so we just want to eliminate that whole section out of our ordinance, as long as it doesn't create any problems for the sheriff's department in any enforcement.
Motion for approval. Motion by Supervisor Jonley. And a second by Mr. Spearings. Any questions? Please, yes, Supervisor
Are
Craig.
you renumbering everything behind it then?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
These can't all be taken at once. Individually. We'll do an individual. Okay, the following ordinance changes are on file in the county clerk's office and the planning and zoning office. Amendments to chapter 34 for farmland preservation properties as follows. We're going to take each individually. D is 2014-554, Z-006-14, Town of Lebanon Farm Preservation Properties. A motion by Supervisor Quistman for approval and a second by Supervisor Handrick. Questions or discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
E 2014-555, Z-007-14, Town of Lynn Farmland Preservation Properties.
Motion to approve.
The motion by Supervisor Gerald Murphy and a second by Jack Penny. Any questions or discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
Next item, F 2014-556, Z-008-14, Town of Matson Farmland Preservation Properties. Motion by Supervisor Federowitz, and a second by Supervisor Muck. Questions or discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
Item G, 2014-557, Z-009-14, Town of Union Farmland Preservation Properties. Motion by Supervisor Craig, and second by Supervisor Johnson. Questions, discussion? Please vote.
Okay. We want to make sure that you voted, because I might have, it wasn't on. Mary Kay, I think Dick.
Me?
Yeah. You guys had the fast fingers. Motion carried, 25-0.
Ooh. Are we down to G? G, 2014-557, Z-009-14, Town of Union Farmland Preservation Properties. Motion by Supervisor Penny for acceptance. Second by Supervisor Fred. Mr. Zog. Any questions, discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
Is that for me, Bob?
Mr. President, tell him I'll call him back later.
Item H, 2014-558, Z-010-14, Town of Lebanon, Lunette Pullman, ETAL AWT District to RC-G District, Outdoor Storage and Wholesaling. There is a motion for approval by Supervisor Questman. Do we have a second? Second by Supervisor Handrick. Any questions or discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
Resolutions. A, resolution number 8, 14-15, oppose lapse in state funding to circuit court systems.
Now therefore be it resolved that Waupaca County Board hereby states its opposition to the lapse of Wisconsin Judicial Branch funding to the State General Fund over the next 2-year period. And be it further resolved that Waupaca County Clerk shall forward a copy of this resolution to Waupaca County State Legislators, Governor Scott Walker, the Director of State Courts, and all other Wisconsin counties. Recommended for introduction by Waupaca County Legislative Judicial Ethics, Safety, and Security Committee.
I imagine you're right on top of that, Kyle, eh? You bet. Is there a motion for approval? A motion by Supervisor Sorensen and a second by Supervisor Johnson. Questions? Discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
Item B is resolution number 10, 14-15, moratorium extension on non-metallic mining activities.
Now therefore be it resolved that there be a moratorium starting September 18, 2014 for up to 6 months or until the county board adopts the newly developed non-metallic ordinance, whichever is earlier, that prohibits the expansion of any non-metallic mining operation beyond its physical dimensions as identified in the reclamation plan on file as of the date of the adoption of this resolution, and further prohibits the creation of any new non-metallic mining operation during the pendency of the moratorium within the unincorporated areas of Waupaca County. The moratorium applies to all such applications for conditional use permits for non-metallic mining operations that are not filed with the Planning and Zoning Department and deemed complete by the Planning and Zoning Director as of September 17, 2013 at 4 p.m. Be it further resolved that an ad hoc I didn't realize there was so much. Committee appointed by the Waupaca County Planning and Zoning Committee be created with the responsibility to collect and analyze information and make a recommendation on creation of a new non-metallic mining ordinance that properly addresses all necessary concerns. The ad hoc committee shall report back their findings to the Implementation Steering Committee for review and to the Planning and Zoning Committee for approval and recommendation to the full county board for their final approval. Be it further resolved that the ad hoc committee be made up of no more than 10 members with no more than 2 members from Waupaca County Planning and Zoning Committee. Recommended for introduction by the Waupaca County Planning and Zoning Committee and Legislative Judicial Ethics, Safety, and Security Committee.
There's a motion by Supervisor Fedowitz and a second by Supervisor Ellis. Questions? Discussion? Supervisor Craig.
Can we have an update from the Planning and Zoning Director, how it's coming?
He's on his way up right now, Pat.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, we've met several times, 8 to 10 times, I believe, so far. We've made it through quite a bit of the ordinance. We have a couple of the more controversial issues yet to go through, the things along like setbacks. But right now, we're at a point where we're just about to finish up. We just have just a little bit left to go, but the committee felt that it would not be in our best interest to try to rush it through, because right now it's a 12-month moratorium and it expires in the end of September. So we would have had to have had it basically done already now and going through the committee and the implementation steering committee. So we just didn't have enough time. Also, I was hoping to take the group on to a couple of on-sites so they can see the real-world examples of the non-metallic mining sites. So we just wanted to make sure we had plenty enough time. So this is a 6-month extension of the existing moratorium.
Any questions for Ryan while he's up on the stand? Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
Proclamation, Clerk Robbins.
Gail, yes, our public health officer has retired. The proclamation of Waupaca County, Wisconsin, in recognition of Gail Yest, Waupaca County Health Officer. Whereas Gail Yest has served as Waupaca County employee since 1986, and whereas Gail was instrumental in bringing the Women, Infants, and Children (WIC) program to Waupaca County, and whereas Gail was hired in 1986 to become the first Waupaca County WIC project director and nutritionist, and whereas Gail was hired by the state of Wisconsin's regional office in 1992 and returned to Waupaca County in 1996 to her former position, and whereas Gail was promoted in 2000 to Health Service Coordinator and Waupaca County Health Officer. Now therefore be it resolved, the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors commend Gail Yest for her dedication and service to Waupaca County and all of its citizens through the years, and wish her continued success in her life journey.
Gail here today?
No.
Okay.
She couldn't be here today, but she was honored.
Okay, we have some appointments today. Item A, Mary.
Okay. All of these committees were in your packets with the change that we had mentioned for the revenue generation team, with the co-chairs being Dean Steingraber and Dave Johnson. So the appointments are for the revenue generation team, communication education team, privatization team, human resources team, private sector investment team, and technology team. Do you want all the appointments, or do you want to take them in sections like this? In sections? Okay. Jeff suggested that we do it in sections, so if there's somebody that wants to approve this A of appointments.
Is there approval for the appointment you just read? There is a hand up by Supervisor Craig. Is that approval of the motion? And a second by Supervisor Zog. Any questions? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0. It is time for our library committee, planning committee. So library 5-year planning committee, Supervisor Joe McClone, Supervisor Patricia Craig, Waupaca Library Peg Burrington, and Clintonville Library Jamie Hine.
There's a motion by Supervisor Hendrick and a second by Supervisor Fedowitz. Any questions or discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0. And the last one is appoint a county supervisor, county supervisor from District 9 to fulfill the excuse me, the term for Dale Trinrud.
Okay, we did have 4 applicants for that open position. Excellent applicants. All of them love Waupaca County, are willing to work for Waupaca County in its best interest. And so it was a tough decision. But then again, at the end of the day, the more I thought about it, and as my wife Nancy would second the motion, I thought about that a lot at home. It came back down to the supervisor that was here last, who's been on top of our bonding issues, has been on top of the county business, kind of been knowing what's happening all the time here, that we don't have to force feed, to teach and just go about teaching about all the departments and what their needs are and so on. So that made the decision a lot easier, and I'm going to recommend for appointment to the opening supervisor spot, Don Peterson. And I think Mr. Peterson's even here today, so I'll need a motion for approval of that. There's a motion by Supervisor Gerald Murphy and a second by Mr. Fleece. Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
And I would like Mary to swear you in today, Supervisor Peterson, I can call you. So if you want to come forth. And then we'll also appoint you to your committees. You just wing it.
State of Wisconsin.
I do.
Thank you, Don. Congratulations. And I also hereby appoint you, Don Peterson, to Land and Water, Park and Rec, and Ag Extension Committees. I believe we'll need a motion on that, too. So that will be his 3 committees. There's a motion for approval. Motion by Supervisor Sorensen, and a second by Supervisor Asen. Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 25-0.
Also, it was good to see Captain Rasmussen here from the Sheriff's Department holding down 2 big chairs. And so you can go back and tell the sheriff you got everything you asked for. Didn't hear you say anything. Good to see you. I guess that's the end of our business, and I think Mr. H.
Announcements?
Okay, sorry.
Before we do that, the fair, just a reminder, the fair breakfast is Friday at 9:15. There's no per diem for that. Executive committee, Dick would like to meet August 29th at 10 a.m. Just kind of put that in. If you can't make it, let me know, because we'll need a quorum, so that would be the last Friday of the month. And that will be a closed session meeting.
Is it on Friday, the 29th?
Yes.
Yes.
I have 28th. Thank you.
Oh. For the executive committee. Executive
That
committee
seemed
at
to
10
be
a.m.
okay? What time was it? 10.
10 a.m.?
I can't make it anymore.
Is there anybody else?
He'll be out of town.
Oh, you're going to be out of town, okay. Okay, that's when we'll have it.
Okay, now.
Now there's a motion by Mr. Asen for adjournment. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Muck. Please vote.
Last chance to vote? Need one more. Jack Penny.
Mr. Penny, could you vote? Vote.
Carried, 25-0. Meeting is adjourned.